Imagine being 18 years old, dressed in a flame-colored wedding veil, walking into what you think is a celebration, and instead being led into a room full of strangers, slaves, witnesses, and a silent physician. And in the corner stands a wooden figure beneath a heavy cloth, a figure everyone already knows the purpose of. In minutes, you'll understand why the cloth is there. You'll understand why your mother cried that morning, and you'll realize your wedding night isn't about love at all. It's about verification. This was marriage in ancient Rome, a ritual so disturbing that Roman historians avoided describing it, and early Christians tried to erase it from memory entirely. If hidden histories fascinate you, subscribe and hit like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The year was 89 CE, and 18-year-old Livia Tirza was about to discover that Roman marriage had two faces: the public ceremony with saffron veils and cheerful songs, and the hidden ritual performed behind sealed doors in front of witnesses who might later testify before a magistrate. Her day had begun beautifully. She wore the traditional flame-colored veil, her hair arranged at dawn and woven into 6 braids. At the temple, favorable omens were read. Her father recited the ancient formula transferring her from his authority to her husband's, and she spoke the binding words, "Ubi tu Gaius ego Gaia," where you are, I am, a vow announcing she no longer belonged to herself. Her new husband, Marcus Petronius Rufus, a wealthy grain merchant 25 years older, had met her only 3 times, yet by law she was already his. Or rather, the process had started, because in Rome, the public ceremony was only the beginning. The truly binding moment waited inside a house she'd never entered, surrounded by people she hadn't agreed to meet. As crowds sang crude, explicit songs meant to ward off evil spirits, young men shouted embarrassing suggestions through her veil. Her mother had said the songs were harmless, but Livia remembered her mother's trembling hands that morning and the final whispered warning: "Do not resist. Whatever they ask, do not resist. It only makes everything harder." When the door shut behind her, Livia saw who had been waiting: an elderly woman in ceremonial robes called the pronuba, a priest, 3 female slaves with basins and cloths, a man with medical instruments, and in the corner, partly hidden beneath draped linen, a wooden structure nearly 4 feet tall. The pronuba clasped Livia's hands firmly enough to prevent escape and said, "Welcome to your husband's house. The sacred rites must now be completed." Few speak honestly about what Roman marriage truly was. It wasn't romantic or sentimental. It was a transaction, a legal transfer of authority as carefully documented as the sale of farmland. Under Rome's oldest laws, a wife passed fully into her husband's control. He held the same legal power over her as over his slaves. And by Livia's time, some laws had softened on the surface, but the foundation remained. Marriage transferred a woman from one man's legal control to another. Romans applied the same verification logic to marriage as they did to land sales, witnesses observed. Rituals invoked divine approval. Boundaries were inspected, nothing was assumed, everything was verified. The grim twist was that the property being transferred was a human body, and that body's ability to produce legitimate heirs was the asset being purchased. So Roman law required both the bride's virginity and the consummation to be verified before the union was considered complete, and the rituals designed to achieve that verification were ones few ancient writers dared describe directly. The pronuba guided Livia toward the veiled structure. Her heart hammered, and she sensed that whatever stood beneath that cloth would change everything. "You must greet mutinous Tutinus," the pronuba murmured. "You must seek his blessing before your husband may approach. The gods must witness your submission." When Livia pulled the cloth away, she understood. Standing beneath was a wooden figure, carved with uncomfortable anatomical accuracy into the shape of a phallic idol, not a tiny charm, but deliberately proportioned, built for one purpose. Mutinous Tutinus was Rome's shadowy deity of initiation and fertility. Augustine, writing centuries later as Christianity tightened its grip, described the ritual with fury. Roman brides were required to sit upon the god's emblem before lying with their husbands, and they did so in front of witnesses. Other early Christian writers reference the same rite. Arnobius claimed brides were made to straddle the symbol while their spouses watched. Lactantius said, speaking of it polluted the tongue, and the ancient language suggests this wasn't merely symbolic. Augustine used words meaning to mount, and Arnobius's phrasing suggested penetration. The official explanation was fertility, but the unspoken purpose might have been to break down resistance, to demonstrate submission before witnesses, to prepare a virgin bride for what the law required next. Livia stood frozen as the pronuba adjusted her posture, arranging her body, guiding her without gentleness, while the witnesses watched in silence. Her husband watched. The physician waited. Technically, she could refuse, but refusal meant the marriage would collapse. She'd return to her father's home as a discarded, damaged woman, unmarriageable. She would disgrace her family and become a source of shame. Her life as she knew it would be over, so she did not refuse. After slaves washed her with warmed, scented water, the physician stepped forward. This part wasn't optional either. In marriages involving wealth or lineage, Roman brides underwent medical verification. An earlier examination had established Livia's virginity. Now came the second examination, checking that the ritual had been carried out, that the physical signs matched earlier documentation. Everything occurred with witnesses present whose statements could later be demanded in court if the marriage was challenged. The bride's comfort didn't factor into the equation. Her emotions were as irrelevant as the feelings of a field being surveyed before sale. Property didn't have feelings. The pronuba led Livia to the bedchamber, where the room was arranged exactly as tradition required. The bed was positioned to be easily seen from the doorway, which would remain open through the night. Lamps burned steadily, and slaves waited nearby. Marcus entered, glancing at the watching pronuba with unease, as if even he understood this wasn't intimacy. It was verification. The pronuba's voice was formal. The bride is made ready. The gods have witnessed her submission. Let the union be completed according to our ancestors' customs. Let those present affirm the act. What followed unfolded under the unblinking eyes of observers. The pronuba stood watch, occasionally instructing, ensuring every part aligned with legal expectation. The door stayed open. Anyone in the household could hear. Every sound was part of the documentation. Nothing about that night was private. Nothing was meant to be. By dawn, the physician returned to confirm consummation had occurred. The pronuba gave sworn testimony. Witnesses nodded. The legal transformation was complete. Livia was now officially a Roman wife. She would go on to have children, oversee her husband's household, and carry herself with expected composure. But about her wedding night, she would speak to no one, not even her own daughters. Livia's silence was universal. Women didn't record these experiences. Men didn't document them in personal detail. The rituals were so embedded that describing them seemed unnecessary. Everyone already knew, yet no one spoke. For nearly 1,000 years, this was marriage in Rome. Generations of brides walked the same paths. Generations of mothers whispered the same warnings. The system endured because everyone accepted its logic. Property had to be verified, and women were the conduit through which family lines continued. These practices didn't end because Rome decided it had gone too far. They ended with the spread of Christianity in the 4th and 5th centuries, when new theology brought new assumptions. If women had souls equal to men, they couldn't be treated as property. If marriage was a sacred sacrament, it couldn't include rituals the church deemed obscene. The shift was gradual. Statues of mutinous Teutonus were smashed or buried. Texts referencing the rituals were removed or left to decay. Wall paintings were plastered over, and within generations, full knowledge of what Roman weddings required vanished. The Christians reshaping Rome were forging a new civilization while refusing to acknowledge what the old one had supported, and they succeeded almost completely. Today, most imagine Roman marriage as charming ritual and romance, but fragments survive. Fragments always survive. Livia Tirsa died around 31 CE. Roughly 60 years old, she had fulfilled every expectation placed upon her. But what did she remember of her wedding night? Did she relive the fear and powerlessness? Did she hope her daughters would endure something milder? We cannot know. She left no written record. The silence comes from women whose experiences were never considered important enough to preserve, whose bodies were central to legal systems, yet whose thoughts were irrelevant to the histories men wrote. Rome is often idealized as the foundation of Western law and civilization, but acknowledging what Rome demanded of its women complicates that story. It shows that brutality and refinement can coexist, that legal sophistication can operate alongside systematic dehumanization. The rituals are gone, but the women who endured them were real. For Livia, for her mother, for countless unnamed brides whose wedding nights were rituals of control and verification, they lived, they endured, and they were silenced.